There is nothing more frightening than when power falls into the hands of an insecure, psychologically traumatized, and self-doubting person. Unfortunately, the largest country on the planet is ruled by a puny little creep. And we're not talking about height here, but about the size of Putin's personality. History has seen many short figures. Napoleon, for example, even for his time, was not the top model. But the scale of his personality overshadowed an entire era. And what can be said about Putin? A pathetic parody of a dictator who wanted to become a global hegemon, but despite having unlimited resources, managed to squander everything in the world and even a little more.
The special military operation is going according to plan.
What the hell are you even talking about?
Putin's main problem is that he is mortally embarrassed by his own body, and first and foremost his height. The pale Putin has the classic old-fashioned Napoleon complex. That's why he fantasizes about seizing huge chunks of other people's land, about giant rockets, and dreams of returning to the G8.
This really is a unique product that no one else in the world has. Moreover, I remember perfectly well when we announced that we had, regarding such a weapon in development, even top-level, highly qualified specialists told me that yes, it is a good and worthy goal to pursue, but at the same time, they also mentioned that it would be difficult. In the foreseeable historical future, it's unachievable.
Write proper texts, not some kind of nonsense.
For the sake of fairness, such a comparison is insulting to Napoleon. Even Bonaparte was loved and respected by his enemies, but Putin is a parody of a leader. His little foot shuffles at memorial services are a comedy genre of their own.
When at the end of the meeting between Putin and Trump, when the fake Putin was standing there fidgeting with his legs, you could guess that he had some kind of device, which starts at his foot and ends on the floor. And this device is about 15 to 20 centimeters long.
It's not for nothing that Putin is also called a dwarf on stilts or a lady in high heels. In the Kremlin, crowds of scientists and engineers work around the clock to make the Führer at least a little bit taller. Russia has no domestic electronics, no decent cars, but it does have nano heels that truly have no analogs in the world. What's tragic for Ali Putin is that what amuses people isn't his short stature, but his ridiculous attempts to hide it. And it even reaches the point of absurdity. To avoid being exposed, Putin wears special shoes. More precisely, these aren't shoes, they're just one big heel.
A number of users, online people have noticed the Kremlin ruler's footwear. In the published footage, it's clearly visible that Putin's shoes have hidden heels inside. The area around the heels is especially noticeable. This isn't the first time Putin has been seen wearing heeled shoes. Earlier footage from one of Putin's press conferences was circulated online. In the photos and videos, the dictator appeared in shoes of a strange shape, as the Telegram channel Crimean Wind reported at the time.
Those legendary elevator shoes were spotted, the ones that add 10 centimeters to Putin's height. As we can see, in such boots, Putin's legs take on very unnatural positions. Just looking at them would send even a seasoned orthopedist on a week-long drinking binge. With his little heels, Putin is practically shouting to the whole world about his insecurity and complexes. Apparently, his peers in the St. Petersburg courtyards used to mock him quite a bit. Maybe they found it amusing that little Pinya was no taller than the average curb.
Exactly 50 years ago, the tough streets of Leningrad taught me one very important rule. If a fight is inevitable, you have to strike first.
Are you already filming? Many people ask, how do you properly rip out an Adam's apple? In
the struggle for extra centimeters, any means are fair for the dictator. Even cloning. Many have noticed that at some events, Putin appears much taller than usual. Immediately, a theory emerged that this was his taller double. This was especially noticeable at Putin's meeting with Trump. Donald is 190 centimeters tall, while the moth barely reaches 169. But the visual difference of 20 centimeters was not noticeable.
Trump is significantly taller than the original Putin. In this case, when they were walking, especially along that red carpet, the height difference wasn't so significant. Of course, I know that the vampire's footwear industry works very well, and those stilts they make for him. Still, this double is not far off from Trump in terms of height.
Either it's some kind of new telescopic heel or they've pulled a double out of the closet, under the codename Skyscraper. There's a theory that while Skyscraper isn't being used, they're stretching him on the rack in the Kremlin basement. Maybe that's exactly where it comes from. Putin got the phrase rubber butt from here.
It is not just, excuse me, a rubber prosthetic backside.
Meetings with Trump are especially painful for the Führer. It's hard to pontificate about a bipolar world when you're staring up your opponent's nostrils. Trump himself, with all his proletarian straightforwardness, openly mocks Putin's height. This was publicly revealed by the U.S. Secretary of Health Kennedy.
One of the funniest moments was when President Trump brought a full-length photo of himself with Putin when they were in Hawaii. He's very tall and Putin is very short. He said, "Do you know what I told him?" I said, "I missed you here."
I can only imagine how many heels were broken in the Kremlin after watching that video. And so Putin's wounded ego shrank to the size of his brain. Medvedev's. By the way, what do you think? Why was Medvedev chosen as Putin's successor? That's right, because Halflita Dimka is even shorter than Putin. Which means the dictator doesn't see him as a threat. Medvedev is the perfect lackey for Putin. Next to him, the pale old man imagines himself as Peter the Great. Perhaps it's precisely because of his own insecurities. Putin loves spending time with other people's children. They're all smaller than he is, and we sincerely hope that's the only reason, and not because, besides being a war criminal, Putin is also a sexual maniac.
Such lovely little and sweet young children.
And here's another argument in favor of the stiletto princess's low self-esteem. Notice that Putin always meets with his subordinates at a great distance. It's all because from a distance they seem smaller, and that makes Putin feel more at ease. At least in this case, he can do without heels and dangle his relaxed legs under the table.
You stuck it in the wrong slot, kid.
For all the dick. As with psychologically unstable individuals, size always matters. Recently, genetic scientists, after studying Hitler's DNA, determined that the German Führer had Kallmann syndrome, in other words, a micropenis. The theory is supported by his low testosterone levels. Hitler had a congenital lack of sense of smell and was focused on politics, with no personal life or family. And you have to admit, that explains a lot. A dictator with a small penis equals a big war for the world.
That's a bold statement.
Of course, we weren't able to get a comment from Kabaeva about Putin's penis size, but considering that, like Hitler, he started a major war in Europe, there are some bold assumptions.
Oh, honestly, a small penis is a sentence in itself. How do you live with a small penis? That's a straightforward penis?
History is cyclical, and a micro-personality will inevitably be punished. But what surprises me is something else. Why does the Russian population ignore the obvious things? They support an unbalanced psychopath who sends hundreds of thousands of them to their deaths just to boost his own low self-esteem. There is only one explanation for this. Most Russians have the same inferiority complex. They want to appear greater than they really are, greater than they actually are. And because of their actual small greatness, they are embittered and cruel.
The dam must be destroyed, the Kyiv Dam must be destroyed, the city must be flooded, Kharkiv must be wiped out, Mykolaiv, Odessa, Sumy erased from the face of the earth, just like Dnipro and other cities.
If Koshchei's death is in an egg, then Putin's death is in a sock. And until Russians tear off this sock, they will not have a normal life. I want to remind you that this video was created for entertainment purposes and contains elements of satire and irony. All facts and events are presented in a hyperbolized or exaggerated form to convey a comedic or dramatic effect. We do not aim to mislead, but simply put the emphasis on humor. Please take this with a smile.
The Russian dictator Vladimir Putin has claimed there are supposed threats to Russia's energy infrastructure in the Black Sea. He says there have been attempts to sabotage the Turk Stream and Blue Stream gas pipelines. Putin immediately blamed Ukraine and said that this was supposedly Kiev's way of delaying negotiations to end the war. And cynically, he made this statement.
They just can't calm down. They don't know what to do to destroy this. peace process with attempts to resolve things through diplomatic means.
The head of the Kremlin also responded to yet another piece of disinformation from Russian media, claiming that France and Britain supposedly plan to transfer to Kyiv nuclear weapons.
It is already being widely reported in the mainstream media, highlighting their probable attempts or even their clear intentions to potentially utilize some kind of dangerous nuclear component. They probably understand how this could end.
Notably, the original source of these rumors is Russia itself. On the morning of February 24th, the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service published a report claiming that France and the United Kingdom supposedly plan to transfer nuclear weapons to Ukraine. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov stated that this is allegedly an attempt by Ukraine to disrupt negotiations with Russia.
This is an absolutely flagrant violation of all norms and principles of the relevant acts of international law. Undoubtedly, this is information. It will be taken into account by us and considered during the ongoing negotiations, because potentially this is extremely dangerous information.
The controversial deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, even threatened a symmetrical response on Telegram in the event that nuclear weapons are transferred to Ukraine. At present, Ukraine and its European partners have not responded to this information. The president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, in an interview with the German broadcasting company ARD, spoke about his message to Putin,
in which he said that he is ready to meet. "We must end this war," said the president of Ukraine. On the eve of the 4th anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Russian dictator Vladimir Putin held a meeting with the families of GRU Special Forces soldiers. This was reported by the Telegram channel of the news agency. According to the project, the Kremlin leader met with the widows of Special Forces soldiers from the main directorate of the General Staff on Russia's Defender of the Fatherland Day. According to the agency's analysis, the husbands of 3 out of the 6 women served in the elite Senej Center, which is part of the GRU's Special Tasks Department and is involved in sabotage operations in the West. It is noted that 2 of the 3 Senej members died in Ukraine and another was killed in November 2024 in Syria during combat on the side of Bashar al-Assad's regime. The agency established that 2 more servicemen whose widows met with Putin served in the Special Forces Center Kubinka II. Earlier, Current Time analyzed that the Russian dictator disappeared from the public eye for 11 days. According to the publication, Putin did not appear in front of cameras from February 5th to February 17th. During this time, the Kremlin press service was publishing canned footage. This is what they call pre-recorded meetings of the president with officials, politicians, and businessmen. The publication writes that when the president goes on vacation, falls ill, or is absent for other reasons, the press service releases these recordings, presenting them as current news. According to Current Time, a plant indicated that the videos had been recorded in advance. In Putin's office, the manicure of Deputy Prime Minister Tatiana Golikova, with whom he held a meeting, and other clues.